Welcome back to Build Your Legacy Insurance Edition podcast. What's going on, Travis?
Hey, Bill. How are you, man?
Yeah, doing good.
Good.
You doing all right?
Can't complain. Getting these hints of springtime and summer out there. So, getting days are going to get longer here soon, I think. So,
Yeah.
all that good jazz.
Yeah. No, glad to see you back in the studio here versus the Team Zoom.
Yeah, I like
podcast.
this. I like sitting in front of you a little better than going through the teams. But hey, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do to get stuff put together, right?
That's right. That's right. So look, let's talk any businesses out there, small business. We talk about specifically, there's all sorts of stats out there. Small businesses fail.
They do.
So insurance agencies are no different. So let's talk about why insurance agencies fail. And maybe prep people, so if they are looking to start an insurance agency, they got a few things to at least look out for, so their chances of failure are maybe less than they listen to this podcast.
Yeah, I think that's a great topic for today, especially considering the time of year we're in. Like you said, small businesses fail. We work with startup insurance agencies, and I would be the first to say we're not batting 1,000% by any means. I feel like we're ahead of the curve, but nothing's perfect. So I think it's good to have an idea of what you need to be prepared. And I think the simplest one is the financial side of it, money, right?
Yeah, I would say that's probably it with most businesses and just in life in general is things happen if the money isn't there to help afford the things that you need and you need to live on.
I mean, listen, you employ people and you see that how what's going on at home can affect their performance at work. No different than if you're the owner of the agency. And so if you're struggling to sort of maintain your lifestyle, take care of things at the house, it's going to affect your ability to be successful. And I think what I've seen in my 9+ years of doing this is those that aren't financially prepared to go an extended period of time without a paycheck, they start chasing the wrong things. And I think that's then creates even more of a problem to where they're putting the time, the effort in on business that there's never going to be a reward for.
Yeah, I think that's a compounding factor. If they don't have it and they get in the jam and they start doing the wrong things and start getting the wrong behaviors, then it's just that cycle and it's hard to get out of it.
Yes.
So yeah, I would say money's the biggest thing. And I don't think we're here to tell somebody how much money they need to start up. We've talked about it, but they need to understand that writing insurance policies, getting paid from the insurance companies, it takes time. Sometimes it could be slower than what they think or what they expect. And so it is something you need to make sure you've got money in the bank.
The joke I tell everybody, it's not a get-rich-quick scheme, right? There's a lot of great things about our industry, but you're not going to get rich quick. It's going to take time for all of that to build up and compound, and there's a lot of other factors there. So be prepared for that to be able to weather that storm.
Yeah. So one of the other things I believe I see a fair amount is, and I'm going to call this in the self-awareness bucket.
Yeah.
Is there are people that start up insurance agencies that already have previous experience. Great option for them. They looked at what they've done, where they're currently at, and like, I can do this on my own.
Right.
And where I say the self-awareness piece is sometimes they may be coming from a captive. They may be coming from a direct writer. They may just be working for a good insurance agency in general, and they're not given credit for maybe some incoming leads, and they're writing business, they're having success, and they're really not paying attention that agency is the one that's generating
the opportunities
X% of that. And to what level, is certainly debatable, but you got to be self-aware because something could be given to you that you aren't going to take with you.
Great point. And that's a conversation I have a lot of times. And it's really one of those to where there's a lot of pride involved in that conversation because you're looking at the success you've had and you have to almost err on giving more credit to where you are for what you're writing than not.
Yeah, fair.
To be able to fairly look at what you can project to be able to do on your own. And, I think, when I'm working with a startup agency, we have that conversation about the sales funnel and the centers of influence and where they expect to get their business from and have that realistic expectation and then sit down and forecast out, here's what you can expect to write on a monthly basis. Here's what you can expect to write your first year, the revenue you can expect. Again, tying back to the money piece to figure out if this is something that they can do truly or not.
You hit a point that made me think. We go through school where you go through business classes and everybody wants you to make a sales and marketing plan.
Right.
And I think when you go through it in a school setting, they're like, we need to make this as good as you can and as appealing as you can so you can get money from a bank. You can do these sort of things, right? But you hit on a good point there that made me think about this. Your sales plan, your marketing plan, there's certainly one that you're going to want to do to make it look as good as possible.
Yeah.
But your point was maybe you need to come down and go way down to the bottom level going, all right, on my plan, I need it to be here.
Right.
I want to hit it up here.
Yeah.
But if you only hit here, you're going to be okay. And you hit a point there, just made me start thinking about that. People maybe overexceed. Like, if I hit all these goals, I'm great. But then the money factor comes in because they're expecting to hit such a high level,
and
they don't.
Great point. I think one of the questions I ask a startup agency is, what do you need in the first 6 months, the first year to keep the door open, to live, and then let's work back from there to see how many policies do we need to write on a weekly basis to be able to hit that goal. Because I want, again, going back to the self-awareness, realistic expectations. Again, when I talk to an agency or a prospective agency owner and they tell me they want to write, $5 million in a year, truthfully, it lets me know how realistic you are. And so those are things, that I sit down and have conversations with people about. You've got to start at the bottom to be here tomorrow.
You do. And I do think if we stay on the sales and marketing plan and flip it a little bit, I think people just don't put the time in that they need to. And they got to understand when they start a business, sales have to be a top priority. Because if you don't sell anything, you don't get any money.
You turned me onto a podcast here recently that I listened to this morning on the way into the office. And, his comment was pick up the phone. Right. I think we talk about all these plans and, where we're going to go and what we're going to do. But any insurance agency, no matter who you are, captive, independent, any insurance agency is first and foremost a sales organization.
Absolutely.
Right. And so I think sometimes when people start up their business, they start looking for planning and operations and technology and all these things. And they're great and they're important. They have their place. But you're first and foremost a sales organization. So again, going back to why we see people fail is they get into the ownership role and they stop selling. And you've got to keep selling. You've got to keep moving forward.
You got to go 100 miles an hour in the sales arena to start getting that income coming in.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
And kind of to caveat to that, another thing that I see, sometimes these agencies or these agents step out, they start an agency, and to that point, they don't want to sell as much. So they start looking to hire. They start looking to bring in talent. And oftentimes they're not investing in the right way. But then what they're doing is they're creating compensation plans with an agent that is not necessarily soundproof, right? They're overpaying. They're not factoring in how they're going to get paid from the carrier, and they run out of money.
Yeah, I would say we've actually I've seen somebody in the insurance business, let me say this, that wasn't able to survive because they didn't want to make the tough choices to back off of compensation.
Right.
And I understand it's a tough thing, but it really led to the demise of this insurance agency because he was overpaying people. And when it came to the choice of going, I've either got to cut their pay back, do something, he just didn't want to make the choice. He was like, you know what, I'm just going to sell the business.
Yeah. I've seen that as well. It's one of those where, you've got to be diligent in what you're putting together. You cannot go and try to create, things that are more, I don't know if impressive is the right word, right? But you don't need to buy talent. There's a reason why people are paid and things are structured the way they are, which kind of leads me to my last thought on it. And it kind of goes with the self-awareness, but we find a lot of times, people go to start their agency and they want to grow, they want to be successful, and just the overall quality of clientele they're going after, right? They're reaching out and they're trying to write a lot of excess lines coverage, or we see a personal lines producer trying to write really large commercial, and they get into things that they're just not comfortable with. They don't know it as well, and they don't understand who they're calling on. So they don't have a realistic expectation of a sales cycle. And oftentimes there's not an opportunity at the end of that cycle to sell something.
Yeah. I mean, and I always hit it, but on with people is the opportunity cost of it.
Yeah.
When they start doing things that are outside their realm, it takes their time away from doing the things that they're good at.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That hits a few points. I'm sure there's 100 others that we could probably advise people.
Yeah. I'm sure there is. I think the two biggest takeaways is make sure you have yourself financially prepared to take the leap. Be aware of really what you're capable of doing. Yeah. And then the third piece is sell, baby, sell.
Yeah, that's right. Well, look, I think we've hit this. Let's do another one.
This sounds like a plan, buddy.
All right. Thanks.
See ya.
Thanks for tuning in. You can catch our Build Your Legacy Insurance Edition podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, or send us over a topic recommendation at podcast@siaofnc.com. If you're interested in learning more about what we do, visit us online at www.siaofnc.com. We hope you enjoyed our newest episode. See you next week.